A code talker is a term used when referring to a Native American who uses their native language to send messages during war. These messages were typically lesser known outside of the US, making them perfect for coded messages. Two forms of code were made using native languages. Type 1 using words as letters in the English alphabet, and Type 2 using direct translations. If a word could not be directly translated, they would combine words as phrases. For example, one would use swallow to describe a torpedo plane if the language did not contain a direct word. An example of a Type 1 code would be if they were to say a direction north, it would be nose, onion, rabbit, tea, horse, with each word corresponding with a letter in the English alphabet. The Type 2 code is simply a direct translation with some words substituted, like turtle as tank. During its uses in World War I and World War II, people who went to train in code talking would learn a code book and memorize its entire contents to allow for a quick translation. This meant that rather than taking several minutes to decode a message, they could understand it almost instantly. Codes were also constantly changing and developing, adding words and changing phrases, which also helped keep the language difficult to decipher. In World War I, around 12,000 tribe members joined the U.S. military, which was 25% of their male population at the time. After the first use of code talkers, the Cheyenne, Cherokee, Comanche, Ho-Chunk, Osage, and Yankton Sioux began providing their languages to help the effort in the war. After the war, the frustrated Germans saw the code talkers as their biggest threat. In the 1930s, Germans sent spies and anthropologists onto reservations to discourage tribes and to learn the languages. They sent agitators and propagandists to prevent enlistment, which ultimately failed, leading to an even larger amount enlisting for World War II. The success of the code talkers also saw all branches of the U.S. government to add and expand the programs. The number of participating tribes even went from 7 in World War I to 34 in World War II. One of the reasons for the larger enlistment was Congress giving participating members U.S. citizenship. In 1918, the U.S. realized that their messages were being intercepted and deciphered constantly. This gave the Germans a huge advantage on the battlefield. After this realization, a group of Eastern Band Cherokee used their native language to communicate messages as a test to see if it would help. This proved to be a success. Other realizations for usefulness of native languages also occurred during World War I, leading to the use of code talkers. While documentation of code talkers in World War I is limited, the least documented of which being the Oklahoma Band of Cherokee, followed closely with the Eastern Band of Cherokee. World War II saw the majority of code talker usage, especially with the Navajo. The Eastern Band of Cherokee was one of the first to use code talking. The U.S. Infantry Regiments 119 and 120 both contained Cherokee soldiers. During the Battle of Somme, officers used this to their advantage and had Cherokee soldiers be the only ones to communicate on the battlefield. Not a lot is known about the Oklahoma Band of Cherokee at this time, other than them being part of 3 battles: Somme, Meuse-Argonne, and Forest Ferme. The best documented code talkers were the Choctaw, who could speak, quote, 26 languages or dialects, only 4 or 5 being written. During World War I, 19 Choctaw soldiers deployed to fight in the U.S. military, and during a battle were overheard by their commanding officer speaking Choctaw. This gave the officer the idea to use the language as a code, transmitting valuable information. He then placed Choctaw soldiers along the front lines and at command centers, having them relay information, which was typically intercepted by the Germans. This new code, however, took the Germans by surprise and helped secure multiple victories in France. The use of their language saw a drop in compromised positions and locations for crucial supplies along the front lines. The lack of direct translations also allowed it to be more complex. For example, machine guns were referred to as little guns shoot fast, and soldiers were counted in means of corn. This allowed it to be a code within a code, a language few spoke or studied, with missing words compensated for with different concepts. At the start of World War II, veteran and Navajo member Philip Johnson realized that the U.S. military could use the language to encode messages. He himself was a fluent speaker, being one of only 30 at the time. He believed the language was unintelligible to those who did not speak it and were not exposed to it. Johnson was able to convince the Pacific Fleet to use the Navajo language as a code, showing that the Navajo could encode, transmit, and decode a message in only 20 seconds, while machines would take 30 minutes. This led to 200 Navajo being recruited as code talkers, with other tribe members enlisting as regular soldiers. In 1942, the first group to attend basic training created the official code as we see it today. The official code was phonetic, based on the language, as well as changing words slightly to help war communication. Code talkers were tasked with transmitting tactics and ordering soldier movements over radio and telephone communications. At Iwo Jima, they were even credited as being the primary reason for victory, with a major stating, "Were it not for the Navajo, the Marines would never have taken Iwo Jima." The Japanese were completely baffled by the language and never cracked the code. Even Navajo soldiers couldn't understand the code produced by their own language. When they listened to the code talkers, they heard them talking about turtles and salt, when they were actually talking about tanks and divisions. While many Native Americans fought in the world wars and provided their languages to help win crucial battles, the code talkers did not receive any public recognition until their information was declassified in 1968. However, they didn't receive full recognition until President Reagan in 1982. After this, some code talkers received Congressional Gold Medals for their service in 2000, and all code talkers were finally given official medals in 2008. One of the potential reasons is that since the code was unbreakable, the U.S. planned to use it in future wars until the public caught wind and demanded recognition be given. At the present, there are several books and articles written about them. However, not enough people really give them the credit they deserve.